Got a big hour here. Steve Phillips will join us from Nashville ahead of the winter meetings tonight, where the Jays haven't done anything yet, but until we hear otherwise, they're in on Ohtani. If they're not in on Ohtani, maybe they're in on Juan Soto.
Yeah.
If both of those fall through, man, people are going to be rattled up here.
What about a Manoah trade?
Well, it seems like that is something that I would guess the Padres would want probably included. I don't think it can be a primary piece anymore.
And I know you're talking about Juan Soto here and Manoah if he has to go the other way. But there's just something about that guy that I feel, and this is even me saying this after what we witnessed last year with the beginning of the season. He looked out of shape. He was gassed. And then the ending was just gross, how he just left and said, I'm not doing it. I just think that guy could reappear and be a stud for 10 years. I really do. And I don't know why I think that after what I saw last year. But if he's got to go, then he's got to go.
Well, here's what I would say on that, and I'm sure the Jays are thinking this way. If you can acquire Soto and sign him long-term, then everyone can go.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, you're trading Vladdy if that's the case. You're trading Manoah. You're not going to think twice. And if Manoah finds his form again, okay, so be it.
Right.
But if it's Soto for a year and then he's going to walk in free agency, that's a very different trade.
Yeah.
I'm not even contemplating that. That's not even a part of my...
No. It's a very different trade. That would just be prospects and,
But you're right.
I don't want him for a year. I do not want the guy for a year. That's stupid.
Well...
I guess it's not stupid.
Unless the year is really good. This
He's
is the
that
Kawhi
good.
situation.
Exactly. Now, baseball is different than basketball, clearly. One guy cannot win you a World Series like Kawhi basically did, although the Raps were really good besides Kawhi.
Yeah.
But Soto, when he's on, he's a top 5 player in the league. Like, he's one of the 5 to 10 best baseball players in the world. He's 25 years old. But it's a very different price if you're acquiring him and you're going to sign him long term, which I can't imagine would be the case. Like, if he's gone this far, he's probably thinking, I'll just get to free agency and figure it out. But we'll see. We'll see what's cooking down there in Nashville. Steve Phillips in about a half an hour. Chris Johnston in Seattle at the Board of Governor meetings.
Yeah.
And obviously Brendan Shanahan is out there representing the Maple Leafs, and he caught up with Gino Reda a little bit earlier this afternoon. They had a little stop and chat in the lobby, and I guess William Nylander came up. You guys want to hear this clip?
Yeah, I'd like to hear this.
Do you get concerned by the fact that Nylander, for what he's doing?
I get concerned about everything.
That's fair, but specifically about Nylander.
I'm like a typical Leaf fan. Everything concerns me. And by the way, typical hockey fan, hockey executive, everything concerns us.
Way to cover that. But the way Nylander's been playing, and the price just seems to be going up and up and up, and you said it, it's a tight cap era.
Well, I think if you're getting concerned because you have players on your team,
I'm just saying, try to keep them financially viable in that situation. That's all.
Like I said, I think if you get concerned because you have players on your team playing really good hockey, then you've got to really check yourself.
Okay, I think that's the way it should be approached. I mean, you got to have. The Leafs have got to be stable. The Leafs have got to have confidence. The Leafs have to believe in their program. They have to believe they can offer William Nylander something that the other 31 teams can't. I'm not talking about money because a lot of teams can offer money.
Yep.
And he was obviously being tongue-in-cheek about the other stuff. I mean, he's familiar with the market. He's familiar with the team. He's from Toronto, et cetera. Been on the job here for a long time. Like, Shanahan's been running the show here for almost a decade.
Yeah.
But what Gino's asking is totally reasonable, too. I mean, it's a cap era, blah, blah, blah. You got a lot of guys who are making big bank already. But it
can go both ways. I got it from both ways from there. Saying, the number's going up. He should have challenged that and said, well, does it go down if he's struggling? He's been kind of, not held pointless, but because he got a point the other night, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he set up the Marner goal, the game we were doing.
Right.
And I don't think he had a point on Saturday, though.
But it's like 1 point in the last 4 or 5 games, something like that.
Right.
You obviously have to ask, too, like, people seem to not even bring this up, and I don't want to be negative when it comes to this particular topic, but he's an unrestricted free agent July 1st. Right. Maybe he might get an appetite to say, I want to test the market.
Yeah.
And as an organization, if you get any sense of that, I don't know. I'm trading him, man. I'm not taking the chance of him just leaving for nothing. I don't care what it means to this season or the ramifications. If I get any sense that he might walk for nothing, I'm not going to play it out the string. I'm not doing it.
Okay, let's ask CJ that. Here's Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. CJ, can you picture a scenario, and if so, what would that look like, where the Leafs trade William Nylander between now and the trade deadline?
I would be stunned if they did that myself, but, I can appreciate what O's bringing up here. I mean, there would obviously be a decision to be made if 3 months from now we're a week out from the deadline, and they know for sure he's not signing by that point in time, and they have to sort of weigh what's best for the organization, short term, long term. I mean, it'll be fascinating if we get to that point. I'm not so sure we're going to. I don't think that, certainly at this point in time, I have no indication that Nylander has any desire to play this out right to July 1st. I think both he and the team have kept an open dialogue and on contract talks, and both are trying to achieve the same thing there in terms of seeing him lock up long term with the Leafs. But look, if it doesn't happen within the next 3 months, then it's going to be a fascinating end of February, start of March as the organization figures out what it does.
Yeah, and like we just played the Shanahan clip. I don't know if you saw it. Like he met with Gino. You guys were all out in Seattle, and I think he was being tongue in cheek about being concerned about stuff like Leaf fans are, like hockey executives are. But he basically said, if you're concerned because you have a good player who's playing well, then why are you got to check yourself, to use his term. And I think that's something that's the mentality they've generally applied with all these guys. Yes, they pay them a lot of money, but these guys are pulling their weight. They're worthy of the money. They're really good players. And I do think there needs to be an element of confidence that comes from this group. And I can only assume that getting Matthews done, albeit not a perfect deal, they got it done. That probably boosts their confidence a little bit as well in terms of the program they have and what they believe they can sell these players.
Well, and they got it done pretty easily in a sense. It wasn't a drag them out negotiation. There wasn't any bad blood there. They did it quietly and announced it, whatever that was, last week of August, and didn't end up being a distraction of any type. I mean, we were just in Sweden 2 weeks ago, and I saw Brendan Shanahan having a long conversation in the stands at the one practice with Michael Nylander there. I think that there's confidence because of the amount of communication there's been with the Nylander camp, but I think that there really is a general feeling that there's something to be done that suits both their interests, and so maybe that's also part of having a lack of concern. But as O points out, we can't ignore the fact that July 1st inches ever closer every day, and things could change, or maybe they just can't get a deal done that makes sense for Nylander, and he does sort of leave them in a spot where they have to make a decision. But I still don't think it's going to get there, but I don't have a crystal ball either, and here we are already in December, and there's still it doesn't seem to be an imminent deal coming through.
That is the biggest thing. And as it inches closer, don't you think, CJ, it might get a little bit noisier? And both sides have been very tight-lipped. Correct me if I'm wrong, because as an insider, there doesn't seem to be a lot of leaks out of either side as to how this is going. Correct?
Yeah, they've been extremely tight-lipped, and I actually tend to view that as a good sign. I mean, you prefer doing my job to be getting more of a blow-by-blow of the back and forth. But I think the fact that neither side is kind of engaged in that is a positive sign about, the trust that exists in those negotiations. That I do know there was conversations about his new contract and potential new contract in Sweden. And so, these negotiations are ongoing, and the fact that they are being kept quiet, I think is a good thing.
Well, and getting back to, the Leafs having to have confidence in their program, we were talking about some teams earlier this afternoon, CJ, that took a step back, but kept core pieces and quickly grew, and the program continued. You look at Boston; they had a stretch there where they took a step back. New York took a step back. The Kings took a step back. I think that it's incumbent on the Leafs to make. Now, again, it sounds like they'll probably keep Nylander, so this will get pushed down the road a little bit. But for the better part of 8 years, the marketing campaign has been, they got 4 great players, and the 4 great players are going to drag them to a Stanley Cup. Hasn't happened yet. But if one of them leaves, or 2 of them leaves, or all 4 of them leave, which will happen someday, the program doesn't shut down. They don't stop playing, and they don't stop trying to compete for a Stanley Cup. And in other words, what I'm saying is if Nylander leaves, okay, make it a positive somehow by using that money for 2 or 3 other players and just keep rocking. Like I think that's kind of what Shanahan is trying to indicate a little bit with the sarcasm. They want him. They're going to try to keep him, and likely that happens. But if not, you got to still be confident that you have other pieces, and now you can have money that you can go and spend and try to complete your team and continue to chase the Stanley Cup.
Right. You got to find some players, too, not always at the top end of the draft. I mean, when you look at the Bruins reload, they drafted McAvoy, they drafted Pasternak, and they didn't get those guys in the first, 4 picks of the draft. They found them a little later, and that would be part of what would need to happen, I think, in any scenario, no matter how this plays out for the Leafs. I mean, we're going to be having more and more focus on who's coming next. I mean, we see it a little bit this year with Matthew Nyes, being part of the team. I know Robertson's been up the last few weeks, but, they're going to have to find some more guys internally that can become difference makers and help give another push to the Matthews-Marner group. The interesting thing when you talk about a step back, too, I think there's a world where you sign Nylander and next year still kind of is a step back. I mean, the Leafs do have some money coming off the books this year. Brody's a pending UFA. And so there's a little bit of relief built in, plus, the cap's going to jump up. But, if you end up paying Nylander $10 or $11 million or something like that, I mean, you might not have much money next year, but then, the following year after that, Tavares' contract expires and, maybe there's some opportunities that opens up. So, I do think the Leafs could easily find themselves in a sort of half step back or 1 step back situation, but still be, haven't lost the total goal. And let's face it, they're still trying to figure out the right mix, and it evolves and changes each year. And, I think that's going to continue whether Nylander is re-signed or traded or, someone else is. I mean, I think you're right. They're not going to go into an immediate rebuild no matter how this individual situation plays out.
CJ, you mentioned the right mix. Is like, are we just talking about like Tanev here and there's some clarity on Klingberg and his injury status and if he's going on LTIR or what the deal is? Because every time I leave my house, I get asked about Tanev, and it's like, I kind of laugh to myself because there's 31 other teams that could also be interested in Tanev. It's not like it's a slam dunk he's going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. Like, is that going to be the only play this year, is try to get a right-handed defenseman and then it's like, go get him, boys? Or what's your thoughts on that?
I'd be surprised if that was the only play. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with it being 3 months of the deadline. Do other injuries come along, that open up some cap space that isn't there today? I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen, but this is not I don't think you could be in the Leafs management box looking at this team and say this is one move away from being the kind of team we need to be. I think that you're going to see them look to bolster in other areas too, but there's some limitations there in terms of what they give up. I don't think they want to be, selling a whole bunch of future assets for players on expiring contracts, the way we've seen in some previous deadlines, just because that does take a toll on the program over time if you're operating that way. And there was a lot of talk about Nikita Zadorov too before he got traded to Vancouver last week. So, I think that, it was always right to link the Leafs to those teams. I think they are interested in Tanev. They were interested in Zadorov. But, someone else came in and made that trade, at a time when Toronto really wasn't in a position to trade for him and keep all his salary. Couldn't be a transaction where they took him without some retention or some other sort of cap finagling. So, I think that certainly it's, the Tanev has some appeal for the Leafs, especially maybe if he's willing to sign an extension. But, that doesn't mean someone else couldn't come in and make a trade for him in the meantime here.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, you're a Blue Jay fan. You'd recall the reports that when Shapiro first got to Toronto, he kind of loudly took apart Anthopoulos in his game plan to go all in 15 and go for it. Led to them going separate ways. Obviously, that was a horrible decision by the Blue Jays in retrospect, because Alex Anthopoulos might be the best baseball executive going. But is there a similar sentiment with the Leafs when it comes to Dubas? Like, do they resent what he left? Or is it's just bygones be bygones?
I think it's bygones be bygones. I mean, remember, Dubas did get a first-round pick back last year in the Rasmus Sandin deal, and sending him to Washington. They drafted Easton Cowan. I think there's some excitement in the organization about, his potential, playing down in London this year in the OHL. I don't sense that it's, it obviously ended in fairly spectacular fashion, but it's one of those ones. I mean, Kyle's gone on to Pittsburgh. He's, got a great contract there from the Penguins. A lot of security. I think the Leafs are happy with Brad Treliving. It just feels as though, and certainly between Treliving and Dubas, they've always had a good relationship personally. I don't sense that it's all out animosity. Obviously, it was kind of digging around this a week or two ago when the Leafs were going to play their first game in Pittsburgh. I mean, there might be some feelings left over there, but I also think it's kind of the nature of the business. I mean, people come and go, players come and go, and I think that certainly that Kyle Dubas still has a lot of close relationships with people that work for the team, and he wants to see those individuals have success as well. So, I don't get the feeling it was quite as dramatic as the Shapiro AA thing, which, by the way, that's not just hindsight. I mean, I think in real time it was apparent that wasn't necessarily the wisest move by the Blue Jays.
No, it wasn't.
Agreed. And Gabriel Moreno trade. There's lots of
there's a lot of different
people
things.
kicking stones at them. I just want to ask you, CJ, you're getting a sense that maybe the trade market is heating up at all?
Yeah, I think it helps when you see Calgary make the move they did, because obviously they're kind of central to a lot of what I think is going to happen between now and March 8th. They have a lot of good players that are on expiring contracts that I think they're going to look to trade as time goes along. And so, seeing that Zadorov trade to Vancouver last week, I mean, now you've got a situation where Tyson Barrie's looking for another spot. I know there's been talks there with Nashville and some teams. And so you do. I think sometimes when you see a move break through, that there's almost a trickle-down effect for it. Or, there was obviously teams that like the player that didn't, he ends up in Vancouver, not in there. And so I think it does, go on. But, let's face it, December doesn't tend to be an active month for trades. But maybe we'll see a couple more here, because there's a little more buzz and rumors swirling around now than there was even a couple weeks ago.
Well, and what's interesting is you look at a few teams in the East here. We mentioned Pittsburgh. They obviously went all in the offseason, acquiring Carlson, signing vets, acquiring Riley Smith, re-signing Tristan Jarry. And through 23 games, they have 24 points. They're on the outside looking in. Tampa has been a mess lately. Like they've lost 4 in a row. They got destroyed in Dallas. They got Dallas again tonight. Vasilevsky's back, and he doesn't look good. New Jersey on the outside looking in. Like those are like Tampa and Jersey were locks, more or less, before the season to make it. And Pittsburgh was supposed to be a team that would certainly be lurking, and they still are. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're 10 points out. But you think those three in particular in the East being on the outside looking in now that we're into December, like something's got to give, because those teams had high aspirations and none of them are fulfilling them so far.
Right. And I'd circle New Jersey especially. I think that their team, they got some injuries on their blue line. Question marks in net. I could definitely see them being a team that, is fairly aggressive as we get into the season to try to find some solutions. I mean, they took such a big step forward last year, both with the regular season, winning a playoff round over the Rangers. And so I think that naturally you expect that you're going to take another step forward again, and it doesn't always work out that way. I don't know what Tampa can do. I mean, they are so tight to the cap and don't have a lot of, obvious players that I would say would be traded. And so, I think that they just have to hope that Vasilevsky figures it out. I mean, they did a pretty good job of keeping pace, I guess, when he was injured. And you thought, okay, now he's back. They've done what they had to do, and you wouldn't expect this losing streak to necessarily accompany his return. And so, I don't know what they do there. I mean, we do know if they get in the playoffs, you're still probably not a team you want to play given their experience, but it's certainly not a foregone conclusion they're going to get there. In Pittsburgh, I would think he'll see Dubas to do what he can still to make some deals. Yeah, I mean those are teams. I mean the West is kind of a weird mix, especially the teams kind of just hold in the final playoff spots there. I don't know how that's going to shake out, but there's definitely, I think, going to be reason for activity, because it just feels like a lot of teams aren't totally happy with what they are, even some of the teams that have had success and have more points banked already. And so, hopefully we get a trade period like we got last year, because if you remember, there was quite a bit of action in those weeks leading up to the deadline a year ago.
CJ, when you say teams aren't happy, I think you would agree that a lot of teams aren't happy with their goaltending. Could you have any explanation why, and I'm sure Noodles, you can chime in, why like the 25 stud number one goaltenders in the league, like why that disappeared? It doesn't seem like that's the case nowadays.
I wish I knew. I mean, it's hard to imagine, right? I mean, if we were doing like a mock Team Canada right now, we could have a pretty good debate about who the goalie would be that would be starting, a game to win a gold medal.
And a lot of people wouldn't love the list.
No, I mean, Aiden Hill did win a Stanley Cup last year in Vegas, but I don't think most people even probably know who he is, and I say that respectfully. But it's not the same as when it was Patrick Waugh or Martin Brodeur or Roberto Luongo, even in his prime. Carey Price. I mean, it just seems like there's not as many of those absolute, every year they're at the top of the league kind of guys, and I think I'd have to lean on someone with Noodles' expertise more than my own analysis, but it seems like every team is trying to get 2 or 3 guys that they're kind of okay with and get by with it. And I think that does make it so that, a lot of those teams are not feeling totally secure with their position in the crease.
Well, a couple things come to mind too, is you're seeing analytics play into part where your teams are leaning more towards a tandem. And then back-to-backs, I can think of a couple guys who are starters that actually play back-to-back. Hellebuck is one of them. He doesn't mind doing that. Everyone else, because of the analytics, they're like, I'll play the number 2 guy, so you want a better number 2. The other thing, too, is at some point we are going to have to readjust the numbers. Like for a while there, 93 save percentage was like, oh, Shesterkin's doing it, everyone's doing it. And now it's kind of 905, 900. It's almost resetting back to kind of like late 80s, early 90s. We have to wrap our heads around a lot of these good goaltenders are only stopping 9 out of 10 because the league is more skilled. It's never easier to get to the middle of the ice. There's more chances, more power plays, like that type of stuff where I almost feel like you have to kind of reset your thinking when looking at a goaltender and going, the outliers are 925, that type of stuff. Everyone else is going to be 905, 908. Like that's
like good goalies.
Good goalies are stopping that, but that's really what we're seeing now is more. And then the guys who are below average are in the 880, that type of stuff, 885. Like that's what you're seeing. It's almost going to have to be like a market reset when we think of goaltenders, kind of what we did before the dead puck era.
Right.
Because look at the goal scoring.
Someone's got to explain to me what dead puck era is. I don't even know what that means.
Think of New Jersey Devils. 18 shots against, giving up like
2-1.
The trap, 2-1.
Yeah, but I could still let a howitzer go underneath the crossbar.
Yes, you could. But could you get to the net in Detroit or in New Jersey where literally Ken Danico's chopping your arm off and Stevens is trying to...
So the dead puck era is referencing the hooking, holding, and the style of play and what was allowed to happen. It wasn't necessarily the puck.
It's not saying the goal scorers were terrible. It's saying that the game didn't allow you to show your best the way it could now.
Right.
So when I say I'm a 40 goal scorer, I could say I scored 40 in the dead puck era.
Yeah, or you could say you had like 56 expected goals or something. Oh, you could trend up.
How many expected did this guy have?
Somebody could go back and look at that, your expected goals. I think they've gone back into
era adjusted.
Yeah, era adjusted what your 40-goal season would be like.
Nice.
Because,
Let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'll be a 50-goal scorer tomorrow.
Keep in mind, because what did Iginla and was it Rick Nash and Iginla that had 41 that won it? The Rocket?
41 won it, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
41
insane.
won the Rocket.
Yeah.
That's dead puck era.
Yeah, and that's even beyond it because, like, Rick Nash was drafted in 01.
Yeah, same with Iginla. I'm just saying, like...
But no, you're right.
That's where it's... You're looking at it where the scoring is kind of down and the checking is up and the hooking and holding was there.
Big time.
It's not there now. Like, goal scorers can get to 50. They can get to 60, the elite ones. Like, there is more opportunity for them because it's easier to get to the middle of the ice.
Right. Wow, look at you. Last year, multiple guys scoring 60. Like that.
Yeah.
That just never happens.
Yep.
All right, CJ. Enjoy yourself out there, buddy. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good, boys.
Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, live from the Board of Governor meetings in Seattle. Joining us here on the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. Ross Atkins is being very Ross Atkinsy right now. He's doing a Zoom meeting.
Reading that, yeah.
So the meetings are in Nashville. He is supposed to be in Nashville. He was supposed to meet with the scrum in person.
But he's doing it on Zoom.
But it's over Zoom, and very simple. Where are you?
Yeah.
I'm just very happy that we can use Zoom. Like he's trying to dance around explaining where
there.
he is. So everyone knows he's not there. So the question is he in LA? Is he in Japan? Where is he?
Oh, maybe he's in Japan.
I don't know where he is. But we'll get you an update on some of the Ross Atkins explanations for why he's not there.
I want to play the whole thing because I want to hear this.
We don't have audio yet. He's still kind of dancing, or he's still talking down there. But I'll read some of the excerpts and also some interesting comments about the idea of them landing multiple players at a big ticket.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are looking at Ohtani as effectively 2 players.
Right.
I don't know what to make of these comments from Ross. We'll get into them. Steve Phillips will join us. We'll get his breakdown. We'll do that next. All right, so Ross Atkins refuses to reveal where he is right now, which I find hysterical.
I think it's hilarious.
It's so funny. They're just
He's not saying his location?
No, he won't say it because he was supposed to be in person in Nashville with the scrum. And instead, like a couple hours ago, the PR team with the Jays sent a note saying, actually, it's going to be over Zoom now.
So they wheel up a TV and his face is
but
there.
why? Like with what's going on, why would anyone be surprised at that? You have to fly places in order for that to happen.
Exactly. So everyone understands that. It's like, but where are you? Are you in LA? Are you in Japan?
Well,
are you in the Dominican Republic or something?
If he's in
where
Japan,
are you?
obviously that's a tell, right? So they're probably trying to keep it under wraps. But if he's just in like Mexico at Cabo, like
I don't think he's partying somewhere.
I'm not sitting at Cabo Wabo, Sammy Hagar's place.
But he was asked about it, and this is what Ross said, quote, this is such a Ross Atkins quote. Due to scheduling conflicts, I was able to be on this call, and I'm grateful for your adjustment to be here with me today. I wanted to make sure that I was with you, and Zoom permitted that to happen, end quote. Okay. Thank you, Ross. Follow up. Where are you right now? And then he just kept saying, I want to thank Zoom. I want to thank Zoom for being available.
Zoom's not.
I don't know why he didn't figure out a long time ago that all the mumbo jumbo, like not silly talk, like nobody in this market, nobody in this town wants to hear it. Like, just come out and say, you know what? I'm out of town. I got to take care of some things. What's the questions?
Right. Exactly. Like, come on now.
Like, cut the crap.
You don't. And out of respect to wherever you are, let's say he is meeting with Ohtani. That's what everyone's going to connect dots to. Okay, you don't have to say you're with Ohtani. You don't have to say.
Why not just sound like a grown ass man where you're like, I'm dealing with
Zoom. Zoom is
like. Just say, I'm out of town. How can I help everybody? What do you got for me today? Thanks for adjusting.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, let's go right to the former GM himself. Here's our buddy Steve Phillips, our TSN MLB analyst. What do you make of this? We're thanking Zoom, but Ross is not announcing where he is right now.
Well, let me tell you what. I am the expert on mumbo jumbo. So let me.
Steve, let me just explain myself, Steve. It's just kind of a. Toronto's a big league city, but it's a blue collar city, man. And people, when they hear that stuff, they're just like, stop the mumbo jumbo, please. Just get to the point. Stop it.
I would say I did a press conference, a scrum of all the writers after game one day or before game one day, and answered a question. And one of the writers actually asked me, was that mumbo or jumbo right there? I think that you can try to get cute answering questions, and all it does is lead to more questions.
Yes,
because you're making it bigger than what it is because you're not answering it directly, and ultimately you put yourself in a worse position because of it. And look, I think that my sense of it is that he's not here in Nashville. Otherwise, he could have. There's a lot of ways you can answer it, and so we're left to think that probably he's in Los Angeles meeting with Ohtani. From Ohtani's perspective, he's put the fear of God in everybody that if anybody's leaking out a story or a story gets out that they're meeting with him, that it would be held against them. So this seems to be, again, this is me doing some GM experience speak deciphering here in translation. He's afraid of messing something up, so he's trying to be cute and roundabout not to get himself in trouble, where there was a direct way to answer it. Just say, I'm out of town. I'm dealing with some things. Can't tell you what it is, and I'm just doing my business. And then the question would be, well, is the speculation? I mean, you know what the follow-ups are. It's not rocket science. You know what they're asking. You know what the follow-ups are going to be, and just prepare yourself to be able to answer the question to be able to, in the end, say, listen, I'm not at liberty to tell you what I'm doing right now. This is a busy time of year. I had to get out of town to be able to deal with something within our off season, and this is what I'm doing. And leave people speculate what they want to speculate.
Right. Yeah, Steve, exactly.
How complex would putting together a package of a proposal to Ohtani be?
So it's a great question, right? I mean, I would think it would be really complicated. However, one of the things that I've heard is that there are two teams in over 500,000 who are making straight offers, and that Ohtani's not looking for opt-outs after 1 year or 2 years. He wants to be treated as a fully healthy two-way player and to get rewarded with the money as a pitcher and as a hitter. And it sounds like there are at least a couple teams willing to play that game and do the dance with them if they're up over $500 million. You know, my view of it was that I couldn't go there. If I were in, I would have to be in the 400s with incentives to build to get to be the pitcher, because you've had Tommy John twice and you scare me to death. Yeah. And so, you know, but it seems like that people aren't really there. Now, I talked to another general manager who would be in on Ohtani, and his indication was that there's still a lot of introductory meetings going on and less negotiating going on. Now, I think for Yamamoto, that is the case. Yamamoto did Zoom calls with people, and, you know, thankfully for Zoom. Thank you, Zoom. So he did Zoom calls with teams, and then he's coming in next week to sit down with teams, and I suspect that will be on the heels of Ohtani making a decision about where he's going to want to go.
So I don't know what was being asked of Ross here, but again, these are all just comments coming in over Twitter, like Gregor Chisholm of the Stars down there. And, you know, I guess Ross was asked the idea, because people are going crazy up here, like, you know, Steve. It's like, hey, get Ohtani, get Soto, you know, et cetera. And Atkins said, quote, "I think it would be exceptionally difficult for us to land two players that are, don't hold me to this figure, but that are 5 wins and above players, $25 million per year and above. Two of those to add to our roster would be exceptionally difficult to pull off." So how do you sign Ohtani if you got to pay two guys $25 million apiece for one guy? Like, if you're going to pay him $50 million a year, did Ross Atkins just basically say we can't do that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, is he saying that they can't acquire them, which means that he can't get Ohtani and Soto both? Or is he saying that you know, that we can't afford one or two of those on our roster at the same time? Now, they can afford two $25 million or more players on their roster, and they can do it at the payroll they're at right now. They have to make some other decisions, but they can afford that, and it still might be able to build a winning team. You can't afford two $50 million players on the roster. You can't do that. You probably can't add two more $25 million players to, you know, to where they are right now, about where they are both this year in the budget and next year and beyond in the budget. And so, you know, the Ohtani decision is one that could easily be defensible, that you're creating a separate line item for him in your budget, because you're going to earn enough money back to cover some part of it, not all of it. I've not seen any math that to me would justify you're going to pay him $50 million and you're going to make an extra $50 million because of him. I don't buy it. I don't see it. I don't believe it to be true. I just don't see the business plan where that makes sense. Now, each year, right? Every year you're going to make an extra $50 million, or you can pay him $25, but you need another $25 million in revenues to cover what he is. You know, but that being said, I think that you know, if they were to get, to me, I think they get Soto or Ohtani. They can't get both. They're interested in both. They'd like to get one or the other, and I'm not sure they're going to get either in the end. And I'm surprised by the pursuit in both of them, honestly. You know, it's counter to what Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins have normally practiced here and previously in Cleveland. It's different from the valuation of prospects that, you know, they came in with a really strong stance and opinion about, because they got Alex Anthopoulos with trading away all the prospects to go for it. You get, you know, David Price and Troy Tulowitzki and the guys that they did to go for it, which I was completely okay with. And none of those prospects have really come back to burn them. Now, Moreno burned them a little bit, but that wasn't even in that kind of a deal. And so, you know, so I don't know. It's a different roadmap right now, that when it's different, it makes me feel like that the owners get a little bit involved, because it's a change in philosophy from what their baseball perspective has been. And it may be that maybe they want to grow their business in Asia, and this is a way to do it. You can write off some of the losses as a loss leader from a tax point of view. And it might be worth it if you're using the baseball team as a loss leader for your other business propositions and such. And so there's some ways to justify it, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the Blue Jays way.
Steve, what do you think the Blue Jays' pursuit of these two players, or possible pursuit, even being interested, what does it mean on the reflection of the current core players on the Jays? Like, I kind of get the sense that they're just quite willing to say, maybe let's move away from, or what are they willing to commit to say they're still a part of it? Because it seems like they'd be willing to kind of move off of anything right now.
Yeah, it does feel like a real pivot from the direction, plan, vision of the organization, which was these homegrown guys that you develop, when they sort of pared back a little bit and you knew that it was Guerrero and Bichette on the way. They were going to start to come and build this team. And Biggio is part of that too. And so, it seemed like a direction. Now, if you get Ohtani and Soto, Ohtani is one where it's a big pivot off of, because I don't suspect you keep Soto and Bichette and Guerrero. Now, I think they should be able to do that. But, we know that Ohtani is going to make $50 million. I don't see how you're going to afford $50 million for one guy or $55 million for one guy, and then $30 million for another and $30 million for another. And I think that starts to add up a little bit too much. I think you keep one of Bichette and Guerrero if you do that. And it may be they've gotten to the point they realize we probably can't afford to keep either of these two guys, that the market's gone beyond that. What Guerrero's going to want more than what we're willing to pay, because we're not sure what the thinking is going to be right now. The shortstop market went nuts last year in free agency, and so Bichette's going to look at a number, trying to get a number that starts with a 3, $300+ million. And so they might look at it and think, we've got a window to win right now. Let's get these next 2 years, get guys in place to be able to try to win, take advantage of it, and then we'll retool and figure out which direction we go. And Ohtani protects you on losing one or both of Bichette and Guerrero.
Yeah, this is where it is difficult to follow the logic here, because, if you're Ohtani, why would you come here if they're saying we're not keeping Vladdy or keeping Bichette? In other words, we're going to get worse after we sign you, and the reason we're not going to pay them is because we're paying you. I can't imagine that pitch would go over well. And conversely,
that would be a deal breaker.
It would be a deal breaker, I would think. And the flip side of it is, if you're Vladdy and or Bichette, albeit completely different play. Ohtani is a unicorn. He's a different beast altogether. But if they have gone this far down the road, and we believe they have, they're not wasting their time. They understand they got to pay the guy a fortune. It's going to be $500 million, $600 million, and I would assume it's basically ownership that's telling Shapiro, go get him because we want him. If you're Bichette and or Vladdy, wouldn't you be saying, well, you obviously were willing to pay him $500 million. Right. Why wouldn't you pay me $300? What would the explanation be? It just feels like them going this far down the road, they're going to have to answer to these guys if they get them or if they don't.
Yeah. Now, look, these are players whose dads were big leaguers, who understand the business of baseball probably better than most. Yet, I think they are human beings, and there are feelings involved. And I think that it's going to be harder for Bichette than it is Guerrero, because I think the thing for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he's a really tough guy to pigeonhole his value. Are you paying him for what you thought he was going to be and what he did a couple of years ago? Are you paying him for what he's been recently and then building in some escalators that if he gets back to what he was a couple of years ago? And at that point, the player might say, well, let me just wait and play it out, because I can get that second kind of deal where you're going to pay me like I am today, and I'm going to have to try to earn more money later. He said, I can get that anytime. And so I think the Guerrero contract is the more difficult one to negotiate right now. And so, they're astute enough, I think, to understand the business of baseball. That being said, it's also unclear how aggressively they've even considered negotiating extensions with those guys, and if they've even started that process, or if it was a non-starter right from the beginning of the conversation, where it was, what are you kind of looking for? Well, you saw the shortstop market, guys are making $300+ million, and the Jays went and said, yeah, all right, we're stopping. We're not even getting involved in that. And for Guerrero, it may be, well, you saw what Aaron Judge got, and you saw the production of a power guy in that. He hasn't quite done that yet, but he did it close to that in the past with 40+ homers and 48 homers. And so, it's a really tough situation. Plus, you've got experience. You've got players who don't need money. You see these other teams getting these deals with 19-year-olds because the kids need money. These guys don't need the money. They come from families that made a lot of money. And so the Jays are really complicated this winter. It could be so much fun at these meetings. They could come home with Ohtani or Soto, and that would be huge for them. Huge for them. But they could come home with nothing.
Whew. Well, that's a distinct reality that could be facing them, and people are not going to be happy up here.
But can I tell you what? Like that same thing can be said for the San Francisco Giants, who last year thought they had Judge and Correa. They're in on Ohtani or Yamamoto. They're in on Matt Chapman potentially at third. They're in on Bellinger in the outfield. And they could lose out on both Ohtani and Yamamoto and then have to piece it together like they did with Haniger and Conforto last year. The Yankees are in on Yamamoto. Here's the thing. Yamamoto I can't imagine a scenario where it makes sense that he goes to the Yankees, because the Mets and Yankees are squaring off for the first time ever, going after a top-flight free agent, both willing to spend money on it. And there will be one more Steve Cohen dollar than there will be a Hal Steinbrenner dollar. And so if it comes down to Yamamoto saying, I'm comfortable playing in New York, I can't imagine he's not a Met, because the Mets will give him the bigger contract in it. And so, but the Yankees could get left with, they're not in on Ohtani. They might lose out on Yamamoto. Bellinger could go play with the Giants or the Cubs and go back to the Cubs and not be there. And the Yankees could be left without getting anything. It is really just such a
Why are the Yankees like that,
offseason.
Steve? Usually it's the Yankees. They're getting Ohtani and Soto, and that's the end of the story, and it's happening. Why is it not like that right now?
Yeah, so their issue is that Stanton is blocking the DH role for Ohtani. They've got $135 million or $120 million left on Stanton. So that's the problem for them with Ohtani. They don't have DH available, and Stanton has to likely DH. For Soto, they may not have the package. Now, they keep saying no on Michael King. Michael King's 28 years old. And I know he showed flashes of really throwing harder and his stuff's come along. Dude, you're a 28-year-old pitcher who finally came into your own, and I can get Soto. Let me go sign, a one-year proposition of a pitcher and get me Soto, but they seem to be reluctant to give him up. If they don't have to put Jason Dominguez in the deal, that top-flight outfielder we saw him a little bit last year who's going to be a star, the Yankees should make a deal, but the Yankees seem to be reluctant. Now, the Jays, there's a question about what do the Padres think about Manoah when it comes to Soto? And Tiedemann we know that they like, but what do they believe about Manoah? Does Manoah have value? And how do the Blue Jays feel about Manoah? And would they put Manoah in the deal? And I'm curious, what do you guys? Would you put Manoah in the deal if it means you're going to get 1 year of Soto?
No, that's the thing, man. If I knew I was signing him long term, yes, of course, in a heartbeat. But
you know what? I give him Manoah for 1 year of Soto.
Would you?
I take my chances. I would. I'm a little worried. I think Manoah can bounce back okay, but I don't know it. And you got multiple years of control still there, and it's a bit of a risk. But I do like the rest of the starting pitching, and your window is over the next couple of years. And so I think they need to address their offense more than they need to build their pitching depth. So if I have to put Manoah in and I get to keep Tiedemann, okay, great, done. Take them. I'll throw in some other prospects in the deal too. The Padres want a pitcher back in return, and I'll take the year of Soto, try to win a World Series this year, and then see if I can sign him. And then if I can, then it means I choose not to sign one of Bichette or Guerrero moving forward.
It's all up in the air right now, Steve. It's going to be a wild week down in Nashville. Enjoy yourself, buddy. I'm sure we'll do it again real soon.
Terrific, guys. Anytime you need me.
There's Steve Phillips, our TSN MLB analyst. We'll come back with our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Maybe we can bet on when Ross Atkins is going to show up in Nashville or where Ross Atkins is right now.
He's in L.A.
You think he's in L.A.?
Yep.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Indiscreet, though.
Okay. All right. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Jags money line. Travis Etienne, anytime TD score. Travis Etienne over in total rushing yards. That's your parlay. All right.
I'm
Etienne
concerned.
is my guy.
Etienne is a stud.
I'm concerned about this group chat going on right now. There's some.
Doogie's got to figure his life out.
No, not Doogie. What's Doogie supposed to do? The line was 9.5 when you picked. You lock in the pick, And now there's so much money coming in on the Jags because everyone believes Hayes and Bro are getting a win tonight. And everything's going to start turning because the 18-wheeler's getting gassed up. And Brian Burke and Ron Wilson are running a team here that are going to completely fold.
Yeah.
And, it's 28-3. I can come up with every analogy you want.
Anyway, Luke and Doogie need to have a Zoom.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Luke, for a guy that's +9, has no confidence in your operation. None. And a gutless refusal to take my proposal that was completely fair earlier today.
Dude, that was an asinine proposal. I'm sorry.
Well,
like you're talking about teams with schedules that are worlds apart. It's not. It's a joke.
It's still sports, man. You still got to play the game. Got to play the game.
Yeah,
Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Same game parlays this NFL season now include passing touchdowns and receptions on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly, 18+ and physically located in Ontario. Timo and Wilson, they're on the Bengals +9.5 tonight.
Wow.
This is the Tim Boyle moment. You guys are absolutely going to fold.
9.5. Was that the spread all along?
It's been base. I think it opened at like 8.5 or 8. Got bet up. Now it's up to 10.5, I guess.
Wow.
All right, we'll see what happens. Good luck tonight. We'll see if Ohtani or Juan Soto or Blue Jays this time tomorrow as well.
Yep.
Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy your games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
Hayes and Al's brother. Enjoy your soup tonight. 4 p.m.
Well,